My name is Claire Benton. I was 18 years old the morning my whole world shattered. I had dreamed about graduation day for years, the day I would finally step out of Riverton and leave behind the shadows of my mother's cold eyes. I thought it would be the first day of my freedom. Instead, it became the day I learned the cruelest truth. My own mother never saw me as her daughter. I remember it so clearly, the smell of my pressed gown, the shine of my black shoes by the door, the old suitcase sitting at the edge of my bed packed with clothes and notebooks. I had my scholarship letter folded neatly in my purse, ready to carry me into a future I had fought for all alone. I stood in front of the mirror that morning and told myself, today begins my life. But then the door burst open. My mother, Evelyn, stormed in. Her voice cracked through the room like lightning, sharp and final. You're not my daughter. You never were. The words slammed into me harder than any slap ever could. I froze, my hands clutching the gown at my chest. She didn't stop there. She grabbed my suitcase and held it down the stairs, the sound of it crashing against the wood echoing through the house. I begged her to explain, but she only pointed at the door and screamed at me to leave. Her eyes weren't the eyes of a mother. They were the eyes of someone who had been waiting for this moment, someone who had been holding back a secret for years and finally wanted me gone. I picked up my suitcase from the front porch. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, whispering. My brother Tyler stood in the hallway behind her, silent, golden as always in her eyes, while I was discarded like trash. I carried my suitcase down the quiet street. Each step felt heavier than the last. My cap slipped from my hand, and I didn't even bother to pick it up. For 18 years I had tried to be enough for her, and in one sentence she erased me. The sun was setting when headlights cut through the dim road. A shiny black Mercedes slowed beside me. The window rolled down, and a man I had never seen before leaned out. His eyes fixed on me, sharp but strangely familiar. Claire, he said, like he had known me all his life. That was the moment everything changed. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you love, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. This story is for you. Who was this man, and why did he know my name? To understand why her words cut so deep, you have to know the world I grew up in. Riverton wasn't much more than a small town with one diner, one high school, and too many secrets tucked behind white fences. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and whispers traveled faster than truth. I grew up in a house where love was uneven. My mother, Evelyn, kept her warmth for Tyler, my younger brother. She brushed his hair in the mornings, packed his favorite lunches, and cheered at his soccer games. With me, there was only distance. She gave me the bare minimum: food, shelter, and orders. My father, Mark, was a quiet man. He spent most evenings with a beer in his hand, staring at the TV as if it could save him from the silence in our house. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch him looking at me with something like guilt in his eyes, but he never said a word. His silence was as loud as my mother's cruelty. I tried everything to earn her love. I brought home straight A's. I cooked dinner when she was tired. I even picked wildflowers and left them on her dresser, hoping she would smile. She never did. Instead, she would wrinkle her nose as if I had brought her weeds instead of roses. I used to think maybe I was just hard to love. Maybe something about me was wrong. But deep down, I knew there was more. The way neighbors would pause when I walked by, the way their eyes lingered on me just a little too long, told me they knew something I didn't. The memory that haunts me most happened when I was 9 years old. I had asked her a simple question at dinner, just wondering why Tyler always got the biggest piece of chicken. She turned on me so fast the fork slipped from my hand. "Don't you ever question me," she hissed, before her palm cracked across my cheek. The sting faded, but the lesson stuck. In that house, I was meant to stay silent, to take up less space, to accept being second best. That was my life before graduation day. A life where I thought maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough, I could finally be seen. But her words that morning proved the truth I had always feared. Nothing I ever did would make me her daughter. And soon, the whole town would begin to whisper why. Riverton was built on gossip. In a place that small, rumors weren't just stories, they were the threads that tied people together. And I had always felt those threads tighten around me, even when I didn't know why. When I was 16, I got a part-time job at the diner on Main Street. It was the only place open late, and it smelled like grease and coffee no matter the hour. I'd pour coffee for old men who sat at the counter, and I'd wipe down booths where couples whispered across their milkshakes. That's where I first heard it. 2 women sat in a corner booth, speaking just low enough that they thought I couldn't hear. "She doesn't look like Evelyn at all," one said. "Not even like Mark," the other replied. "She's too tall, too sharp. It's strange." I froze, rag in my hand, pretending to scrub the same spot over and over. They weren't the first to notice, but hearing it so plainly made my stomach twist. It wasn't just them. Teachers gave me strange looks too. Once, after class, my history teacher, Mrs. Fowler, stopped me as I gathered my books. She leaned close, her eyes soft but searching. "You're not like the rest of the Bentons," she said quietly, almost as if she regretted at the moment it slipped out. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the bell rang, and she turned away. I walked home that day with the question boning inside me. The whispers never stopped. They were in the way neighbors glanced between me and Tyler, in the way old ladies at church tilted their heads when I walked by. It was like the whole town knew a secret about me that I wasn't allowed to know. At the time, I told myself it was just in my head. But standing on that road on graduation night, suitcase in hand, hearing Evelyn scream that I wasn't her daughter, it all came rushing back. The whispers had been the truth peeking through, and I had been too blind to see it. What if the entire town had known who I really was, before I did? Some people say silence is harmless, that it's better to keep the peace than to start a war. But when you grow up in a house like mine, silence is its own kind of violence. My father, Mark Benton, was the master of silence. Every night, he sat in his worn-out recliner with a beer in his hand and the TV glowing on his face. He didn't laugh at the shows, didn't talk about his day, didn't even ask about mine. He just sat there, the sound of the crackling can and the shifting channels filling the space where his words should have been. And yet, there was something in his eyes when he looked at me, a heaviness, a guilt I couldn't name back then. He never treated me cruelly like my mother did, but he never stepped between us either. His silence was his choice. There were nights I'd creep down the stairs, hoping maybe he'd talk to me when no one else was around. Sometimes, I'd catch him watching me as I passed through the room, his eyes following me like he wanted to say something but the words wouldn't come. I'd wait for him to open his mouth. He never did. I told myself he loved me in his own quiet way, that the guilt in his eyes meant he cared, even if he didn't show it. But guilt doesn't protect you when someone is tearing you apart. I'll never forget the night I begged him to defend me. I was 12 years old. Evelyn had found out that I had been writing in a journal, pouring my feelings onto the page because I had nowhere else to put them. She read a part where I wrote, "I wish she would love me the way she loves Tyler." She stormed into the living room, waving my notebook in the air like it was evidence of a crime. She screamed about betrayal, about how I was ungrateful and dramatic. Her words cut me open in front of him. I turned to my father. Tears blurred my vision, but I could still see him sitting there in his recliner, beer in hand, jaw tight. "Dad, please," I whispered. "Please tell her to stop." He looked at me for a long moment. I thought he would finally rise, put down the beer, and shield me. Instead, he lowered his eyes to the TV and stayed silent. Her words kept coming. Mine broke off in sobs. His silence was louder than both. Tell me in the comments, have you ever begged someone to defend you, and they just sat still? And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss stories that uncover truths most people hide. That was the night I realized sometimes silence cuts deeper than screams. If Evelyn was a storm in my life, Tyler was the sunshine that never dimmed, for her, at least. He was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. Tyler was 2 years younger than me, and from the moment he was born, it was clear he was the favorite. She dressed him in neat little polos, cheered at his games, bragged about his report cards at church. Even when he stumbled, she found a way to praise him. I didn't hate him. In fact, when we were younger, he was the only one who sometimes treated me like I belonged. I remember one night he came into my room with a pile of homework. "Claire, can you help me with this math problem?" he asked. I sat with him for an hour, explaining step by step until he understood. The next morning, he showed Evelyn the paper with the perfect score. She hugged him tight, kissed his cheek, and made him pancakes. She never knew I had been the one who guided his pencil the whole time. She didn't ask, and he didn't say. That was how it always went. I did the work, he got the reward. And maybe, deep down, I thought he deserved it because he was the son she wanted. But the worst memory came one winter, when money was tight. I had worn the same old coat for 3 years, its sleeves too short, the zipper broken. I asked Evelyn if I could get a new one. She brushed me off, said there wasn't room in the budget. A week later, she came home carrying a brand new pair of sneakers for Tyler. Bright white, name brand, the kind kids at school envied. She slipped them on his feet, beaming. He grinned, while I sat in the corner with my arms wrapped around myself to keep out the cold. That night, my stomach growled because dinner had been small. Evelyn scraped the last of the casserole onto Tyler's plate and told me there wasn't enough left for seconds. I watched him eat until my eyes burned. Would you call that love or cruelty? Comment below. And if this story hits your heart, like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. That night, I promised myself one day I would leave Riverton and never come back. The weeks before graduation were the brightest I had ever known. I could see my way out of Riverton, and nothing felt stronger than the dream of leaving. I had worked for years, saving tips from the diner, studying late into the night, filling out scholarship forms when everyone else was asleep. When the letter came, offering me a partial scholarship to a college in New York, I cried into my pillow until it was soaked. New York meant freedom. It meant anonymity. It meant starting over in a city where no one whispered about who I was. I would walk the busy streets with my head high. I would sit in classrooms where no one compared me to Tyler. I would finally be more than the girl my mother didn't want. The night before graduation, I laid out my gown and cap, polished my shoes, and folded the letter into my purse like it was sacred. My suitcase sat by my bed, stuffed with everything I owned. I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the skyscrapers, the lights, the life waiting for me. Morning came, golden and hopeful. I dressed slowly, savoring each step. This was the last morning I would ever spend in that house. Then the door slammed open. Evelyn stood there, her face hard as stone. "So you think you're going to New York?" she sneered. "You think a piece of paper makes you better than me?" My heart pounded, but I stayed quiet. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You're not mine," she spat. "You never were." The words fell like a hammer, crushing everything I had built. If you've ever been told you don't belong, hit the like button now. And subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn no one saw coming. I thought she had only meant it as an insult, until I learned the truth was darker. Graduation morning was supposed to be my start. Instead, I was out on the street, dragging my suitcase with tears burning in my eyes. I told myself I wouldn't break, not where the neighbors could see. My heart thudded, but my steps stayed steady. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, forcing myself to breathe. The cool morning air stung my skin, and every sound, the bark of a dog, the slam of a door, felt sharper, louder, as if the whole world wanted to watch me fall. I whispered, "Don't cry, Claire. Don't let her win." Each step echoed with memories of Evelyn's words. "You're not my daughter. You never were." The suitcase rattled across the uneven sidewalk, my whole life packed into a few bags. I thought maybe I'd keep walking until the world forgot me. Maybe Riverton would just fade away in my rearview mirror. I had no idea where I'd end up. Then it happened. Headlights cut through the early morning haze. A sleek black Mercedes slowed to a stop right beside me. The tinted window rolled down smooth and slow, and my breath caught in my throat. The driver's door opened, and a tall man stepped out, dressed sharp in a dark suit that screamed money and power. His shoes gleamed like mirrors, untouched by dust. He looked right at me, and then he said my name. Clay. I froze. My suitcase slipped from my hand and hit the pavement with a dull thud. How did this stranger know me? What would you do if a stranger pulled up knowing your name? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to hear the rest of this story, because it's only getting darker. I stood there shaking, staring at the man who knew me, my name echoing in the morning air. Who are you? My voice cracked, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. He didn't flinch. Instead, he softened his tone, almost gentle. I've been looking for you. Something about his calm voice sent a chill down my spine. He gestured to the car. You shouldn't be out here alone. Let me give you a ride. I stepped back, gripping the handle of my suitcase like it could protect me. No. Tell me who you are first. His eyes flickered, something sharp, then gone. My name is Richard Hale. He said it like I should recognize it, like the name itself carried weight. Maybe it did, but I'd never heard it. I don't know you, I whispered. He tilted his head, studying me as though he was memorizing every line of my face. But I know you. I know more about you than Evelyn ever told you. The sound of her name made my stomach twist. What do you mean? Richard stepped closer. Not threatening, careful, measured, like he knew I was a cornered animal ready to bolt. Claire, you've been lied to your whole life, and I think you deserve the truth. I wanted to scream at him, demand he stop playing games, but my throat was dry. He leaned in just enough for only me to hear. I'm your real father. The world tilted. My knees nearly gave out. I grabbed the suitcase to steady myself, my mind spinning. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, you're lying. But the way he looked at me, it wasn't a stranger's look. It was something else. My chest heaved, and I could barely breathe. If Richard was telling the truth, then everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. The silence between us stretched until it felt unbearable. My heart pounded so loud I swore he could hear it. Richard finally spoke. I know this is a lot, but I can explain. I can give you a better life, away from Evelyn, away from Riverton. His words tempted me, more than I wanted to admit. A better life, safety, escape, everything I dreamed about since I was little. But dreams always came with strings. He opened the back door of the Mercedes, revealing soft leather seats and the faint smell of cologne and money. Come with me. You don't belong out here. I hesitated, hugging myself tight. Why now? If you're really my father, why did you wait until today? A shadow passed over his face, something he tried to hide but didn't. Because today is the day you needed me most. It was too perfect, too convenient. My gut twisted. Something about him felt off, like he wasn't giving me the whole truth. Still, standing in the street with nowhere to go, his offer wrapped around me like a lifeline. I'll go, I said slowly, but I'm not stupid. You're hiding something, and I'm going to find out what. Richard's smile flickered, part pride, part unease. I slid into the back seat, the door clicking shut beside me. The Mercedes purred to life, and for the first time, I wondered if I had just stepped into salvation, or a trap. Lily Hayes hadn't set foot in Riverton for years, but when she came back, the whole town felt smaller, quieter, and meaner than she remembered. I wasn't there to see it myself, but people told me later how heads turned when Lily walked down Main Street in her long coat and red scarf. She started where most people start in Riverton, the diner. That place was always buzzing with chatter, and it didn't take her long to hear my name floating in the air like smoke. Poor Claire. Evelyn threw her out. Can you believe it? On graduation day, of all days. Lily set down her coffee cup and listened, her jaw tightening. She hadn't come back to stir trouble, but trouble had a way of finding her. She visited a few old neighbors too. Most of them were eager to gossip. Some shook their heads and muttered about Evelyn's temper. Others whispered things they wouldn't have dared say years ago. Claire never looked like the Bentons. Everyone always said it. The more she heard, the colder her hands grew. Something about the way people spoke, like they had always known there was more to my story, like my life had been an open secret, made her blood boil. That night, in her rented room, Lily unpacked her bag. At the bottom, wrapped in an old scarf, was a photo, a small one, faded at the edges. It was me, Claire Benton. I must have been about 7, my hair in messy braids, smiling wide though Evelyn stood behind me with that frozen half-smile she wore when she wanted to look like a mother but didn't feel like one. Lily held the picture a long time. She remembered the day she'd taken it. She remembered the way I'd clung to her hand when Evelyn wasn't looking. She closed her eyes, and a decision hardened inside her. She was going to confront Evelyn. Lily pressed the photo flat against her chest, whispering to herself, "You can't hide this anymore, Evelyn. Not from me." I wasn't there for this part either, but I've been told so many times I can see it in my mind like I was standing in the room. Lily showed up at the Benton house late afternoon. The sky was gray, heavy with rain, and Evelyn answered the door with a scowl, her hair pinned too tightly, her eyes cold. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn snapped. Lily didn't waste a second. She pushed past her sister and stepped inside. "We need to talk. About Claire." The air went sharp. Evelyn's lips pressed thin. "That girl. She's not my problem anymore." Lily's voice shook with anger. "Not your problem. She's your daughter." "Don't you dare," Evelyn hissed. "Don't you dare call her that." The fight burned hot, words clashing like sparks. Lily accused, Evelyn denied. Lily begged her to explain. Evelyn spat back venom. Finally, Evelyn broke. Her voice cracked as her hands shook. "She's not mine," she said through clenched teeth. "She never was." Lily's breath caught. "Then whose is she?" Evelyn turned away, pacing like a trapped animal. And then she said it, the words that split the past wide open. "She's Richard Hale's." Lily staggered back. "Richard?" "The businessman." Evelyn laughed, but it was a sharp, bitter laugh. "Yes, him. My mistake, my curse. That man ruined everything. And that child, she ruined my life." Her voice dripped poison on every word. Lily's hands trembled as she pulled the photo from her bag and held it out. "No, Evelyn, you ruined hers." Evelyn slapped the picture out of Lily's hand and screamed, "Get out of my house before I ruin yours too." I woke up the next morning in a bed softer than anything I'd ever known. The sheets smelled like lavender, and the sunlight poured through tall glass windows that overlooked gardens that stretched forever. Richard's house wasn't a house at all. It was a mansion. Marble floors, gold-framed mirrors, chandeliers that sparkled like stars. I felt like I'd stepped into a dream. At breakfast, a maid brought me a plate with eggs, fresh fruit, and bread so warm steam curled from it. I ate slowly, almost guilty, like I didn't deserve it. Richard watched me across the table, sipping his coffee. "Get used to this, Claire. You'll never go hungry again." Later, he showed me to a room filled with clothes. Dresses, shoes, coats. More than I could ever need. He told me to pick whatever I liked. My hands shook as I touched the fabrics. Silk, velvet, wool softer than clouds. For the first time in my life, I felt wanted. Chosen. But as night fell, the shine began to dull. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered the long halls of the mansion. That's when I heard Richard's voice, low and sharp, coming from his study. I crept closer, pressing my ear to the heavy wooden door. "Yes," he said into the phone. "She's here. Finally." Pause. "No, she doesn't know. She thinks it's about family. But you and I know the truth. She's the key. My legacy depends on her." My stomach dropped. My chest tightened. I stumbled back from the door, my heart pounding. That night, in Richard's mansion, I realized the truth. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was a pawn. Betrayal has a taste. It's bitter, sharp, and it lingers in your mouth no matter how hard you try to wash it down. That's what I felt after Richard's phone call, after Evelyn's words, after years of silence that crushed me. Both of them had lied. Both of them had used me. One claimed I wasn't her daughter. The other claimed I was his only to lock me inside his golden cage. I was done being their secret. But in the middle of that storm, I remembered one person who had never turned her back on me. Aunt Lily. When I was small, she brushed my hair gently when Evelyn yanked too hard. She whispered stories to me at night when my tears soaked the pillow. She had left Riverton, yes, but her love had never left me. I packed a small bag from Richard's mansion that night, not the silks, not the jewelry, just the photo of me at 7 years old with braids and a stubborn smile. I slipped out the back door before sunrise. I found Lily 2 towns over, staying in a rented room above a flower shop. Her eyes widened when she saw me standing at her door, suitcase in hand. "Claire," she whispered, pulling me into her arms. For the first time in days, I felt safe. We sat at her small table, tea steaming between us. I told her everything, the mansion, the phone call, the truth Evelyn had spat out like poison. Lily listened, her face pale but steady. Then she stood, went to her suitcase, and pulled out a bundle tied with ribbon. "I didn't plan to show you this," she said, her hands trembling. "But you deserve the truth." Inside were letters, old, yellowing letters in Richard's handwriting, and photographs. Evelyn and Richard together, laughing, touching, wrapped up in a world they thought no one would ever see. My chest tightened as I held them. This was it. Proof. The weight of my pain pressed onto paper and ink. I looked up at Lily, fire building inside me. She destroyed me with her lies. He tried to own me with his lies. But now, Aunt Lily, now I have the truth. Lily slid the last photo across the table. Evelyn, pregnant, smiling at Richard. "What will you do with it, Claire?" When I stepped back into Riverton, it was like the air itself leaned in to listen. The town loved its gossip, and they could smell a storm coming. People tanged as I walked down Main Street with Lily by my side. Some nodded politely, others whispered behind their hands. A few even smiled, as if they knew something was about to change. By afternoon, the whispers had turned to waves. "Claire's back. She's got something on Evelyn. Mark's not gonna like this." That evening, I didn't wait for courage. I walked straight into the Benton house like I belonged there. Evelyn was in the kitchen, her hands deep in dishwater. Mark sat at the table, sipping his beer, his eyes tired. Tyler leaned against the counter, his golden boy smirk fixed in place. The second Evelyn saw me, her face twisted. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome." I didn't flinch. I laid the letters and photos down on the table one by one. Mark's hand froze on his beer. Tyler's smirk faltered. Evelyn's eyes went wide before narrowing into daggers. "Recognize these?" I asked, my voice steady. Evelyn lunged forward, grabbing for the papers, but Mark's hand shot out, stopping her. For once in his life, he wanted answers. The room went silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. "They are lies," Evelyn spat. "Forged. Fake. Trash." "No," I said, my voice rising. "They're your life. Your truth. For years you told me I was nothing, that I didn't belong. But I do belong, just not to you." Mark's face drained of color. He looked from the photos to Evelyn, then back again. "Is it true?" he whispered. Evelyn's chest heaved. For a second, I thought she'd crumble. But instead, she snapped, her voice sharp as glass. "Yes, it's true," she screamed. "She's Richard Hale's child. Not mine. Not yours. His. And she ruined everything." Tyler's mouth dropped open. "Mom." Mark shoved his chair back, the beer spilling onto the floor. "All these years, Evelyn. All these years you let us think." "Shut up," she shouted, her voice cracking. Don't you dare judge me. I did what I had to do. But her words fell empty in the room now heavy with truth. I looked at her, the woman who had thrown me out, who had spit on my dreams, who had worn her cruelty like perfume, and I felt something shift. I wasn't afraid anymore. Evelyn lunged at me, screaming, "You don't get to ruin me, Claire," as Mark grabbed her arm. "If you were in my shoes, would you forgive or expose her? Tell me in the comments below. I want to hear your truth." The next weeks tore through Riverton like a wildfire. Evelyn Benton's secret was out. The affair, the lies, the years of cruelty. Neighbors who once smiled at her now turned their backs. Women whispered in the grocery aisles. Men shook their heads at the bar. Mark moved out within days, taking nothing but his clothes and his pride. Tyler, the golden child, stopped coming home at all. For the first time, Evelyn sat alone at her table, her voice unheard, her anger wasted on empty walls. Richard Hale didn't escape either. The story spread fast. The wealthy businessman who had fathered a child and hidden her away. Reporters camped outside his mansion, questions fired like bullets. His polished image cracked. His business partners began to step back, wary of scandal. And me? For the first time, I was free. I didn't belong to Evelyn's bitterness. I didn't belong to Richard's wealth. I belonged to myself. Lily held my hand when I signed the final papers for my scholarship. Together, we packed my bags again, not with fear this time, but with hope. As we drove out of Riverton, I glanced back once. I saw Evelyn standing on the porch, her arms crossed, her face pale. She had nothing left. Not her marriage, not her golden son, not her reputation. She had given me loneliness, and now it was her turn to taste it. I turned forward, my chest lifting, my heart lighter. College waited. A new life waited. I wasn't just a girl kicked out on graduation day anymore. I was Claire, the daughter who survived, the woman who chose her own future. Evelyn stayed in Riverton, bitter and alone, the very fate she had tried to force on me. If this story gave you chills, subscribe and join our community for more powerful stories of revenge, truth, and empowerment. And don't forget to share where you're watching from in the comments. I love knowing where my story reaches.